This is a gorgeous shot and a gorgeous model. But if I zoom in with Command plus or Control plus, you'll see things that only the camera should see, no one should actually be subjected to. It reminds me of those magnify mirrors. I think they should be outlawed as you get older. But looking at this, if it's cold in the studio, you may get a little bit of chicken skinning here, and every single mole, or it might be a blemish that's covered with makeup, really pops out at you. In fact, most people have very soft hairs on the face, and the lighting of the studio can make those jump out. But also the sharpening of the camera that happens automatically or after the fact in Adobe Camera Raw can show every fine hair. In this video, we're going to focus on some simple yet very powerful skin corrections and brightening the eyes a bit. Firstly, you'll notice that her under eyes look a little bit dark. So we'll go to my favorite patch tool. Now I will tell you that the LA Hollywood retouchers use the healing brush tool and clone to a new layer. Because they're paid so much for every shot they're retouching, and because they don't want to have to start over if they go too far, they can use layers and opacity to blend it. But more of my work is get it fixed, get it better, and get it out in a production environment. So these are tricks I use when I know I'm not going to have to go back next week or next month to make edits and bring back the original. I'm going to start, she's got a little makeup here in the corner of her eye, by just making a circle around it with the patch tool. And if I dragged to something with texture, you'll notice it repeated that crease under her eye. So with patch, it's better to drag to actually a lighter area. You should be using skin to repair skin, but if you pick something slightly out of focus, the patch tool will automatically blend. And you could do that in a few spots. I'm actually not going to remove all the creases under her eyes because I usually run a Hollywood filter on it to blur after the fact, and the blurring will hide a lot of it. But the lighting can often cause shadows under the eyes even when there is none. So under the Dodge tool, it looks like a little lollipop. The default will be midtones, and to tell what a midtone is, I can choose Window and Info. And in Info, I can see that in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, this area, the tonal range or the colors under the eye are hovering around 50%. Some actually go darker to around 70 or 80, and that would be considered a shadow. In fact, out of the box, your exposure will be 50%, and that will look way too artificial. I usually dial it to between 10 and 20. We'll start with 20, and I'll click away here to deselect. I'll hit my right bracket key on the keyboard to make the brush about as big as the area under her eye that I'd like to repair. And then I could make it a little bit smaller here, and now I've dodged just to remove some of that shadow, most likely caused by the lighting. Over here I can dodge. And then in the eyes, there's a dark shadow and I can't see any of her eye color. Sometimes when everything is this dark, I will just sweep straight across a few times to lighten it up. Also, as we age, our teeth and eye whites tend to yellow, so by brightening the eye whites, we make us look younger, but we also improve the contrast between the light and the dark areas of the eye, really making the eyes pop, or more the focal point of the image. And I can only go so far here. In fact, it's very common that people go way too far, and now she's got glowing eye whites, which look really fake. So using the history brush, the letter Y for history will jump me there, and an opacity, meaning how much of the original do you want to paint back? An opacity of, again, roughly 20% will let me paint back subtle amounts of the original so my corrections look more realistic. The eye whites are brighter. I could see some of the brown of her eyes, And if I go to history, I can scroll up, here's before, scroll down, here's after. I'll collapse that. And now I'm going to do just a little bit more skin repair with the patch tool. So on the patch, I'll take any of the bumpiness, which might be moles, might be blemishes, we don't know, and remove them. But I might want to leave a little bit of dimples here. That's your call. I've heard of some celebrities who always have moles removed by the retouchers, and they wish they left them there because it's part of their face. So just know that. That looks more like a mole. I will leave it alone. So there's a few spots where I may decide to leave it, just depending on whether I think it's a beauty shot or not. A beauty mark, as they would say. If I zoom into her chin, here I can see I've got a little bit of bad texture. So I'll use this area to repair it. Chins always seem to pick up bad patterns or texture. I think it's because our phones hit them a lot, so they're more prone to breakouts. Good, and I've done some great patching. Now, she has a slight double chin. In fact, when I shoot my videos, the last one for my Photoshop CS5 video had such poor lighting, I swear I had 4 chins. And I know I had weight on me because I had a baby, but I didn't want to have 4 chins. So, in a lot of shots, if people attempt to lean back to get into the photo, or often when you smile, you lean back in excitement, that will cause a double chin. Whether or not you weigh 100 pounds or 200 pounds, everyone can get a double chin just because of the angle that they're leaning at or because of the lighting direction. So a light from underneath will actually help hide that shadow that looks like there's a double chin when she probably has none. So here is the anti-fat, anti-double chin tool. And there are other ways, but this is one of the quickest ways. Filter, liquefy. And liquefy got radically better in CS6. It's a lot faster, and the brush size now used to have a limit of 1,500 pixels. Now it can go to 15,000 pixels. And it does slide very quickly in the beginning. So I want to make my brush size about the size of the chin, and I'm on this forward warp tool. And I'll zoom in with Control plus or Command plus. And I will just take this chin and pull it up. Now you may say, okay, that's really messing with the line of her face. That's completely okay, because I'm going to restore the original line of her face with history. This actually elongates the neck as well, and I'll click OK, and it looks really different and very odd to begin with. Undo, Command Z or Control Z, before, after. So the double chin is more subtle, but the chin itself is wrong. We'll fix that using history. In history, the thing I did right before liquefy was deselect, and I had repaired some imperfections in her chin. So I will take a snapshot of the repaired version and then click on liquefy. If I scroll to the very top of history, I've actually increased my undos to 40. In your preferences, in performance, history states is your number of undos. But I don't want to paint back the original bumpiness of her chin. I want the perfected and corrected snapshot that I just took. So I clicked the brush to indicate when I paint with this history brush, paint with that snapshot. If you're new to history, avoid clicking the icon and avoid clicking the word snapshot 1, because if you do that and do anything, you lose all your undos. Be very careful. If I undo very quickly, I get them back and I can safely go to liquefy the last thing I did. So, history brush source is on snapshot 1, the picture I took of the repaired skin. The history brush itself, I want to go back to 100% opacity, and I'll zoom in, and now I have to imagine where the original chin line was. I'll use my right bracket key on my keyboard to have a nice soft blended brush, and I'll click and drag, letting go periodically so that I have undos. And I'm painting just very low. In fact, sometimes I like to increase the hardness between 80 and 90% so I get a more solid line at the bottom of the chin. I'm painting back the original chin line, but being careful not to paint back the double chin portion. And there I could see the original chin line coming back in. That hardness looks too rough, so I'll undo. And I'll soften it a bit, and this just takes some trial and error. There, more soft, more subtle, smooth strokes to bring back her real chin. I'm not making a new one, I'm repairing one. So let's take a look at before and after. This is the only time I scroll to the very top. Here's before, bad shadows, eyes aren't as bright, dark under the eyes. Go to the last thing in history brush, click once, there's after. So this has been permanent, yet safe beauty retouching using patch and history brush with snapshots and opacity. I'm going to save at this point so I have a retouched version, and if I so choose, I can move on to Hollywood, really artificial, bright, contrasty skin. But I'm happy with this for realistic, corrected skin and chins.